And welcome back to another episode of Over the Glass. I am your host, Ness.
And I am Jay.
We have so much to talk about this week. The trade deadline that happened Friday. We attended a game last night that we're going to get into later on in the episode. I am so tired. I had such a long day yesterday, so we're gonna get through this episode, but it might take me a while. I think we're going to start off talking about stuff going on around the league before we get into our beloved Sharks and the traumas they're going through. um, uh, Something happened with the Avalanche and Erik Johnson. Was he traded back to them, or is he what is happening with this situation? I didn't look into this.
Yeah. So, from what I kind of gathered, Erik Johnson, he's part of the Cup Run squad, BFFs with, I believe, their captain. A lot of that's kind of the vibe that I've gotten from this guy. Just an overall, loved by his teammates, may not be that top pairing defenseman but he had a role on the team and everyone loved him. And then I believe it was a season or so ago that he was traded. As things happened, he went over to the Flyers, and from what I gathered, I don't really know what their plan was for him over there. We don't follow either of these teams terribly closely, but from what I saw, he wasn't really getting any ice time. I just looked up his stats for this season, and he's played 22 games. So, when you look at the Flyers lineup, it's they're trying to get back into the playoffs. They've got their go-to defenseman. So it just seems like he was the odd man out, and it looked like the Flyers GM decided to do him a solid, and he's like, hey, I'm going to trade you back to the Avs. Good for the player to just go back to a place where he can enjoy himself, because I don't know if he was exactly having much fun not playing hockey in Philadelphia. But this clip that I saw from his media appearance, it's not so much that he's not playing, it's just that he's just kind of there, right? And I feel like the GM decided to do Erik Johnson a favor, send him back to the Avalanche. And in this media appearance that he had, he said, I'm willing to do anything here, play 5, 10, 15 minutes. If you want me to shovel snow in between whistles, I'll do that too. Bro just wants to be part of something, probably just wants to be around his teammates. And maybe he just wasn't fitting into, for whatever reason, that the Flyers picked him up for their season. So I just thought this was really wholesome. I've seen this, like I said, I've seen this guy in the Avalanche space. He's very well loved by the fan base. So I think this was one of those rare moments in this sport where, while we empathize with the person, at the end of the day, these are human beings that are having their lives altered by trades, by the media talking about them, about their performance, whatever. I think we rarely see moments like this where there isn't really a business oriented aspect of it. It's just, hey, I just want to do you a solid, and so I wanted to highlight on that.
Yeah. From one of the times I did follow the Avs, he did seem like a very loved player, and everyone was really upset when he did get traded. So it's nice that they get reunited, which is actually seemed like a theme in this year's trade deadline. A lot of teams reunited with some old players or former players. Like I saw a list earlier in the week. There was Nyquist. There was no, I can't. I'm blanking on everyone. But there's a whole
Riley
list.
Smith.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, that was a big one. Smith.
Which we don't follow the Knights, so I'm just like, okay. hey, like we always expect kind of Vegas to stay in this picture and make these big moves, and I was kind of expecting them to do something, and then never actually happened. And the one thing that they did end up doing was with Riley Smith. And I mean, the Rangers, I think they're kind of expecting that this season is going to be one to go in the trash can. So whatever, like give us something in return. You can have him back. I guess generally speaking, I'm like wondering, was it just cuz trade? Cuz I mean, I know that Riley Smith was part of like the original with Marchessault and William Carlson, but I mean, where they're trying to go, like I guess I don't know where he sits in that impact.
Yeah.
So it
Well,
just seems like sure, you want him back, here you can have him.
well, he is a good player. He did play really
Yes.
well for the Knights, so I mean, it's not like a throwaway trade or anything.
Right.
But it does kind of also seem a little bit sentimental for them.
Yeah, it feels
Rangers.
more sentimental than actually like, yeah, we needed that guy on our power play one type of thing. Like
Right.
he is gonna impact the team in a positive way, but in terms of who they have on their roster already, it kind of seems more like a nostalgia trade
Yeah.
than actually like he's the guy that's gonna get us over the hump or something.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
The Rangers were also a team that reunited with a former player in JT Miller. The Sharks decided to take part in it a little bit with getting Noah Gregor back in a trade, which I thought was really
I think
interesting.
that's a throwaway trade though. I think it's one of those like we talked about last episode where, when we like look at these trades, like who's this guy? Like how does he fit into into what we're trying to build over here? And I think it's just a matter of like contracts being moved for the sake of the
Which is fair.
opportunity. So I don't think we'll see Noah Gregor at the NHL level for the Sharks. Whether or not he's really the trade was meant to help the CUDA out, I don't know. But I don't see, like, apparently, like from other podcasts and reactions that I've been listening to after the trade deadline, it kind of seems like Gregor didn't want to be here for that last season he was with us. Because from my perspective, it looked like he was trying to play for a spot. And then we decided we're moving on from him. The Noah Gregor project is over. And then when he went to Toronto, it almost seemed like he was bitter about it in his like when he was being asked about it in the media and everyone, I think he was like put somewhere near the top 6 for a little bit in like the first couple of games he was there. And everyone initially, because he like came out and he was like getting assists and he was really like being productive, and people are like, oh wow, like how did San Jose let this guy go? And then
Yeah.
you didn't hear anything about him after like the initial couple of games, and then he went down to like their AHL, and then he found his way to the Senators. I think he was up with them for a couple of games, and then now he's traded back to us. So I think it's just kind of funny.
This business is yeah, well, we don't want to get too much into the Sharks because we will talk about that forever. I didn't oh my god, how do I make this transition?
In other news,
Yes, thank you. In other news, with Connor Ingram, apparently has been out of the what team does he play for? Utah?
yes,
He's been out of the lineup for a little bit, and he decided to post a message. Oh, this morning. Oh, this just happened. Okay. He posted a message this morning explaining his situation and what's going on, and it sounds like he will be entering the oh my god, what is it called? The
play
NHLPA.
assistance program.
Thank you. My god, my brain. He does give us a little explanation about, most people assume that this program is for substance abuse, but he was very clear that that's not the reason he's going in. He's just having a lot of trouble because he lost his mom to breast cancer earlier this year. It seems like he was he's still grieving and dealing with the effects of losing a parent. So I don't know, should I read the message?
Might as well.
All right. So with the caption, he said, "I'll be back," with a blue heart because that's Utah's color. He said, "For those of you that don't know, earlier this season, I lost my mother to breast cancer. After trying to make a return to playing, I have come to realize that I am not myself. At this point in my life, I need to put my health first and take the proper time I need away to come back at 100%. Though many view the program as a resource for substance abuse, I want to recognize all that they do. I am once again privileged to have access to their network of world-class health professionals to hopefully avoid long-term negative effects of putting your health second. With the program's assistance, I look forward to getting the medical help I need and returning to a happy and healthy life." So good on him, honestly. We've mentioned before, there's a lot of players that will try to play away their pain or mental health problems. So it's good on him for taking the time for himself that he needs to actually grieve and help himself move forward from this loss.
Yeah. Well, we wish Connor Ingram well. Yeah. Can't imagine what he may be going through, but glad that he is putting his health first. Yeah, like so on the fantasy side of things, I had him initially on my roster, and then when he went on IR, I think he got injured. I think I made some moves and then when he came back, I was thinking, oh, this will be really great for someone to pick him up. And he didn't really seem like, I don't know, because I don't follow the Utah Hockey Club that closely. I don't know if like management was kind of aware, if he was kind of like telling them, what he was going through, but it didn't really seem like he was getting too many starts, or if he was, maybe he wasn't performing as well. So the fact that he kind of comes out with all this just sort of like makes more sense of, because I kind of felt like, hey, I thought Ingram was the guy for Utah because they picked him up a couple of seasons ago. And you imagine when guys come back from IR, it's like, yep, just go right back to being the starter. And so it seemed a little strange, just to kind of bring in some other little bits of feeling like there might have been something going on around the time. And yep, looks like there was something really affecting him. And so yeah, I'm glad that he's getting the help that he needs.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. Such a strange way to transition back to this trade talk.
Now back to sports.
No, for real. Okay. Listen, everyone listening. Listen, guys. Listen to this podcast. Jay loves talking about this stuff. So they're going to come here and tell you all about their favorite bits, about all the trades, the big trades that happened around the league, with the Florida Panthers, the Dallas Stars. Their big names were acquired. And you can take it. Take the floor. I am struggling today. I'm so sorry.
Yeah. So, I mean, for anyone who's following the league at large, it should be no surprise that the Boston Bruins have kind of been struggling this season. It's the first season that they have not had their tandem of Allmark and Swayman. I don't think that's any surprise that they moved on from Allmark because he was kind of the buffer to help transition Swayman, who, I mean, they drafted him, we're trying to get him to eventually take the starter role. And I think it was like this past season was when their former captain retired, Bergeron, I think. And so it was basically I'm trying to usher into a new era. They're moving on from, obviously they had a really strong back end, and they had a lot of their key players who were contributing to make them so successful for a number of years. And things have just seemed like they haven't really been going in a positive direction. And where are they right now in the standings? They are, where are they here? Oh, they are currently 66 points and 2 points out of a wild card in the East. So they're not doing too great. So you can imagine why they are sellers right now. And one of the big sells was Brad Marchand, who we all know has been a Bruin since he came into this league. And it's crazy to me. But when you look at the trade, it's not as crazy, but just generally speaking, because he's a Panther now, can you see that? Not really. Like I can't see it. I'm sure it's going to be really hard for Boston fans to see that, especially they're in the same division, I think. Let me see. Yeah. Ooh. Give it to a divisional rival. Yeah. So that's essentially maybe in some way like the hurdle trade to Vegas type of thing. Like you don't necessarily want to be helping your divisional rivals out. So I mean, we're not going to get into any of the like deeper details into that because frankly, I don't really know from a Boston Bruins fan perspective how this affects them and how they feel about this. Just generally speaking, I'd imagine you don't want to give him to the Panthers because they're like your rival. And but I think it's kind of crazy that this dude who we all know is associated with the Bruins is now a Panther. But when you look at the trade, it kind of reminded me of Joe Pavelski because Brad Marchand is 36. He starts entering into that different contract situation where the entirety of his contract weighs against the cap. And we know that as players get into the latter half of their career, they're not as, as they once were when their playability and things like that. And even like if you look at someone like Marc-Andre Fleury, like he or Jonathan Quick, like they're getting paid a couple mil, and they're kind of the mentor for the young kids and whatever that are in net. And so I think naturally, with the exception of maybe folks like Ovechkin, like it makes sense that you're offering less to these guys. And from what I gathered was that Marchand wanted 3 years. So again, relating back to Pavelski, I think Pavelski also wanted 3 years, and Doug Wilson at the time only wanted to give him 2. So they couldn't meet there. Well, the Boston Bruins initially gave him a 3-year offer, and he didn't want that. I imagine it's because it's less than what he wanted to get paid annually. And then they came back with a 2-year at $3 million, and I guess they couldn't agree to that. So what do you do in this situation? Well, he's a pending UFA. Goodbye. Right? And it's like, I think from the outside looking in, I think the GM tried his best to be like, you're a fan favorite, you've been here forever. But the reality is, I just don't think Brad's really been that guy anymore on that team. And all the other things that I talked about with an aging player, productivity, yeah. And it's Brad's right to be like, no, I want you to pay me more. And so they couldn't come to agreement. So off he goes. So
can you imagine Marchand and Kachuk on the same roster? That sounds so aggravating.
Well, I guess we're gonna see that in due time.
No, for real. Next season, because Kachuk. Oh well, I guess Kachuk. We don't know if he's coming back for playoffs or not, but
Mm-hmm.
that's gonna be. Ugh, ugh. That sounds annoying to play against. Good luck to anyone going up against the Panthers in the playoffs. The big name that I did kind of follow a little bit here was, uh, he's one of my favorites. Mikko Rantanen got traded. This one's an interesting story because obviously the Canes are looking for, these stars to kind of fill in whatever they're missing on their lineup. They got a big name in Rantanen. They gave up a lot to have him on this team. This happened, I want to say 6 weeks ago, or less than. Rantanen from the get-go was like not expecting to be traded. I think it affected his mental health a lot. Like he wasn't ready to be playing for a new team because he was in the middle of his contract talks with his agent and then the team as well, trying to negotiate something they could come in compromise with or whatever. Ends up getting traded, plays on the Hurricanes for a bit. He wasn't producing a lot, and he made it very apparent that he wasn't happy playing there. So he told the Canes, like, hey, just trade me if you find something good, So they did. They traded him back to the Central Division, which is crazy. And so now he's going to be playing for the Dallas Stars for about the same, just a little bit more, but about the same amount that the Avs had originally offered him. I think the Avs offered him 11.75 million, and then the Dallas Stars offered him 12. I don't remember term.
Yeah, I'm trying. There was a breakdown of it, and I unfortunately did not save it. But the big discussions that I ultimately saw around this whole situation of just like he goes to the Canes, and then like less than a month later, they're like trying to flip him, and I was like, what is
Yeah.
happening? Like, what went wrong? A lot of people were talking about like it probably was related to taxes. There's no evidence that that was ever talked about, but just the breakdown and the types of like I saw some Avs fans talking about like how he was asking his asking price was like 14 million and then he ends up signing for less, and like they're upset that there's like you could have just signed for that here. But then when you think about it, Texas, there's no income tax there. So when you think about like the money he would be losing, I don't know if that was the main part of it, but like you said, he was kind of blindsided where he's like, I was willing to continue talking about it. I really wanted to stay here, but for one reason or another, out there like, no, I'm done with this conversation. Goodbye. We're gonna get Martin Natchez and all this other stuff that the Canes are willing to give us. And then I didn't actually see anything to the stuff that you were talking about related to his time with the Canes. Like, I just felt like he just didn't want to sign an extension there for one reason or another. But the details that you talked about, like, well, that adds a little more context to it. And like one of the first things when that trade was made was like, and you guys didn't get an extension confirmed? That's a little risky. And well,
Yeah.
then we end up in this situation where they're like, well, doesn't look like you want to stay here. So trade deadline's coming up. We need to make something happen. And I saw, well, ultimately he ended up going to the Dallas Stars, but then like the Oilers were in the mix. I think New Jersey was trying to get in on him. Can you imagine if he went to the Oilers? That, oh my God.
That would have been insane. I would have hated it.
So, but ultimately he goes to the Stars, and like, wow. Like if I were to choose a team that I can see making, or should ideally by personnel wise make the cup this season, like wow, the Stars really put themselves in a position where they can do that. And that is crazy that they, and like the details of that trade, let me pull it up here. So the Dallas Stars acquired Mikko Rantanen from the Carolina Hurricanes for Logan Stankoven, a conditional 2026 first round pick, conditional 2028 first round pick, 2026 third round pick, and a 2027 third round pick. Like they were like, what do you want, man?
No, for real. They give up a lot.
Wow. Like they were like, yeah, we need to make this trade happen. Like, what do you want from us? We're all ears, is what this looks like to me. Like,
yeah,
that
and
is
like
crazy.
Rantanen is one of those superstars that we kind of mentioned earlier that we talked about before we started recording. He is worth the price, right? This guy produces at a crazy rate. He's a hell of a playmaker. He seems to be a great guy in the locker room. He was best friends with a lot of those guys on the Avs, and they were really upset to see him go. So it'll be interesting how he affects the Dallas locker room and everyone they have there. But what a crazy trade deadline.
One more note on that trade. Apparently the conversations with the Oilers didn't pan out because they just were not giving them what the Canes wanted in return. And so it just goes back to, Dallas was like, no, just look at us. right here. What do you want? We'll give you whatever. It just looked like, and I was actually expecting like the Canes being like in a situation where they traded off these guys and then they didn't get an extension confirmed with Mikko Rantanen. And now they're in this situation where while they don't have to trade him by the trade deadline, it is more ideal than waiting till the off season when this guy is, I believe, is pending UFA. Yeah, so he's pending UFA, and like worst case scenario, you end up not getting the value back from this trade and how much you've lost. But apparently, I'm very wrong. Like the Stars were like, no, we'll give you whatever you want.
Yeah, he's worth it.
Kind of jealous, man.
No, for real. Like, I want a superstar on the team. Ours are still developing.
I want to have that power to make everybody give me what I want.
No, for real. All right. We're going to take a moment here to talk about our sponsor, who is, if you guys didn't know by now, is DraftKings. So this NHL season has been predictable as the puck rolling on its edge. No one knows where it's going, as we just talked about with this trade deadline. But that just means there's time for your favorite team to figure things out and games left for you to get in the action at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NHL. It's super easy for first-timers to get started. Try betting on something simple like picking a team to win. Go to the DraftKings Sportsbook app, select your team, and place your first bet. And if you're new to DraftKings, listen up. New customers bet $5 to get $150 in bonus bets instantly. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use code THPN. That's code THPN for new customers to get $150 in bonus bets instantly when you bet just $5. Only on DraftKings. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 877-8-HOPENY or text HOPENY 467369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-78-97-777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort, 21 plus age and eligibility varies from jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. New customers only. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. For additional terms and responsible gaming sources, see dkng.co/audio. NHL and the NHL Shield are registered trademarks of the National Hockey League, NHL, and NHL team marks are the property of the NHL and its teams. All rights reserved. Okay, so for tomorrow we have a few games going on. I will read to you the money line. So the Oilers are playing against the Sabres. The Oilers are at a negative 192. The Sabres are a plus 160. The Red Wings going against the Senators. The Red Wings are at a plus 136. The Senators are at a minus 162. The Blackhawks going against the Avalanche. The Hawks at plus 330. The Avs minus 425. And then the Leafs going against Utah with the Leafs at minus 118, and then Utah at minus 102. So go ahead and place your bets if you are doing DraftKings. If not, you should probably get on it. There's some good stuff going on around the league. All right. This is where we thrive. We're gonna
right
go ahead.
Before we start thriving, speaking of the reunions and stuff, we missed the part where Brandon Tanev goes back to the Winnipeg Jets.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that guy. I did see
and
that.
go reunite with his BFF. What's his bucket? I literally was looking him up earlier. Shoot, Adam Lowry. There we go. Reunited with his BFF.
Reunited.
So good for them.
So good.
I was actually talking last night about the Jets and how crazy they are this season, but I am not choosing them for the long haul for the cup, because I still feel like they're leaning heavily on Hellebuck and him having continuous amazing seasons.
If they win the cup, it's gonna, Hellebuck should just be his name. I'm just kidding.
It's literally gonna be the Montreal Canadiens during that cup run.
Oh, right.
Price was standing on his face.
That is not his head, his face.
His literal face. Every part of his body he was using.
Okay. So we're gonna talk about some sad things, but also some things that, we're gonna try to make some sense about what's been going on with the Sharks. For those of you who follow them as closely as we do and have come to love certain players, it's been hard to see some of them go, but this is the shitty part of the business. It is what it is. You gotta grieve as you will and keep it trucking. Let's go back to the beginning of these little trades. So
how far back are we going?
Oh, I didn't realize it went that far back. Wait. We want to start with.
I think we should start with the Vanacek trade, since we've already talked about like the trade with the Stars.
Okay, that makes sense. Go ahead. I'm trying to find it.
I mean, yeah. So we know that Vitek Vanacek is a UFA, and we've already talked about how there have been no discussions with our pending UFAs on this team. We're very much in a situation where, if there was no interest in Vanacek, I mean, we know he kind of came into this season as sort of like, this is your time to boost your value. You're not necessarily here for ideally for a goalie we want long term, but if it works out for our rebuild and how you could support it, we could keep you here. But as we can see with the way that my career has been working, it is there's several paths that all these players could take. It is not a, yep, you're here and here's the reason why you're here and we're sticking to it. Like he's listening to folks who are interested in these guys, and we're trying to get value back that makes the most sense for us, whether it's guys that can veteran presence that can help to support the youth, giving them the ice time that they deserve, or we're getting picks for these upcoming drafts and continuing to add to the number one prospect pool in the NHL. So, and it looked like Vanacek, we talked about how he's definitely been improving his game and helping the Sharks out, especially after the Blackwood trade. So it's no surprise that the Panthers, who recently shipped it off Spencer Knight to the Blackhawks, so they very much look like they want another deep cup run, and they need a veteran to be able to help Bobrovsky out. And they decided, Vanacek's that guy. And what do you want from us? Well, we ended up getting Patrick Giles, and he had his first game last night. And I actually liked what I saw. I like that he came into this lineup. I like there were little things like he came into the zone. He used his body to move the player away from him, create space for himself, drove to the net. I don't know a whole lot about this guy outside of what we saw last night, but I liked what I saw.
Yeah, it comes back down to what we've been talking about from the beginning with a lot of these trades that have been going on, with Greer bringing in these guys to see if they can step up to the plate, prove to him if they can be in this lineup. And like, these guys either get traded to the Sharks because they're not getting opportunities on their teams or whatever it is, but they have something to prove. And usually when they first get here, they do provide us with like the little things that we need on the ice, or just little things, I say. And like, blocking a shot is little. Blocking shots, making plays that again aren't on the score sheet. But with due time, we'll see how this develops. Everyone's still kind of fresh off of the I was just traded, like, let me prove myself here adrenaline. So I'm gonna wait and see, like, usually I'm like, you know what, Greer, I understand what you're doing here. You're trading away most of the older guys, the aging guys, getting younger guys here. There's some here that I'm still trying to process, but I suppose I will continue to trust the process. One other trade that doesn't make sense to me, just because I don't follow. I didn't know who he was until we got him, is the trade with the Penguins, where we acquired Ducharnay for a 5th round pick, which seems good. 5th round pick is like later in the draft. And at least we get like a steady defenseman. In my head, I don't get it, because it's like, we had Jake Walman, and he was a proven defenseman. I loved everything I saw from the moment he stepped on the ice for us. And now we get someone around the same age. I don't know. I get it, but I don't get it,
I guess my question is, because ultimately, Jake Walman, I mean, like, while we need help on the defensive side of things, I'm actually okay with moving Walman, because essentially we ended up getting a first, a second, and then we got a prospect. Yeah, we got a prospect who seems like he's going to help Dakuda with their cup run, all this stuff. And we basically got Walman for like nothing from the Red Wings. And yeah, he is the same age as Desharnais that we ended up getting from this trade with the Penguins. But after the trade, I mean, Mook was on the top pairing with Ferraro for last night's game, and then the previous one after that. And I mean, I don't know necessarily the young guys who are going to be trying to make the team next season, but it is very obvious that the team wants to give the youth their time on ice. And Walman Ferraro take up a lot of that time on ice right now. I think it could have gone either way with if I don't see how Walman could not have gotten traded with the amount of like positive stuff he was helping on this team. And then Ferraro, if he ended up getting traded and for some reason Walman didn't get traded, like I think like either of those would have been a possibility. But I think moving forward, we still do have the veteran presence that we need to support the youth. Like Vlasic's still going to be here next season. That's probably going to be his last season. I think this is a move to still allow the youth to have sufficient support without making them play like only 15 minutes a night. So yeah, while Walman did do a lot of good things for us, I don't really see it being a like we must keep him.
Yeah. I think I just
When
really
we
liked
get something of value right now during this trade deadline.
like I said, I get it, but also it's like we've been looking for good defensemen, and he was there. He was right there for us. I did want to clarify for those listening that the trade specifically that happened on Thursday night, Friday, for Walman did include Carl Berglund and a conditional first round draft pick for next year, 2026. The second that Jay mentioned, the second round draft pick was from when we acquired him from the Red Wings for future considerations, which was wild at the time because, yeah, we do get like a possible first rounder and a second and a prospect for this guy. So yes, I understand the value in the business side, but it's like this it kind of also ties into what he brought to the locker room, with Walman gone, Cunnin gone, who apparently was a big vibes guy as well. With the last episode we talked about the whole seating chart on the plane, and most of the guys chose to sit next to him. He was a big part of that. And then I don't our poor baby Zetterlund got traded too. And then I worry. I understand what Greer is trying to do, but I worry that he might have affected the good vibes a little too much with this trade deadline. And I know in his interview he said it's going to be short-term pain for the guys, but it'll be good for them in the long run. But what about Eki? Did you consider his feelings?
I think they're going to be okay.
I understand. It's just sad. How dare he separate them?
So, and then my last thought on the Jake Walman trade is that I was watching Mukundoolan very closely last game. As I mentioned, over the last couple of games, his ice time has ticked up by quite a bit. And while he's not quite where I ideally would like him to be, I am really happy for this opportunity for him. And I know for Jack Thompson, he's been up and down the lineup and whatever, just for when players get activated and things like that. I'm really excited to kind of see him take on a bigger role next season. And while we still have folks when Walnut got traded and Ferraro didn't get traded, I don't know. There's a subset of this fan base that just does not like Ferraro anymore. And I'm gonna say here, my hot take: Ferraro has been here through the good and the bad. And while Jake Walman, he's a much calmer defenseman and is able to make a little more his gameplay seems to be a little more straightforward and he can execute a little bit better. I feel like because he came in and we've been out of the hardship of those those years where Brent Burns wasn't here anymore and Ferraro ended up having to step into like really big shoes of being the veteran guy and put into roles where, you know, Ferraro's not really the offensive defenseman, but we no longer had one, especially when we traded Erik Karlsson away. Like Ferraro has had to adapt his game even when it is not his strong suit, even at the end of the day, like he is not cut out for it. He was the only guy to be able to do it. So we had to see him at his best and his worst, also while no longer having his mentor in Brent Burns and the stability of that. And I feel like that has tired a certain part of the fan base. So when Jake Walman came in here, it was like, yeah, let's just get rid of Ferraro. We finally found the guy that we need. And it's like Ferraro does so many good things for this team. And he may not have been the guy that is going to quarterback your power play one, but he plays a different role than Jake Walman, and he is neither a worse defenseman in that regard. And I just feel like everyone kind of saw the new shiny thing in Jake Walman and was like, yes, let's keep this guy. He's the answer that we need. And I think they both helped out the team in different ways.
Yeah, I think part of it might be that Walman might have a few more years experience as well. You know, he is 4 years older. I did look that up before we started talking about this specific topic because I did also feel like Walman is the better defenseman, and I wanted to check where they were the age gap wise, and it does play into Greer's plan. Like if any of you guys look, most of the trades that Greer is doing, most of the trades he's making, he is going for younger guys. I think it's because he is counting on a lot of our prospects to come in and take up these roles that we're so desperately looking for right now. He is playing the long game. He is waiting for those prospects that he has drafted that are developing in juniors to come up and fill those roles. And like I did read an article, I can't remember who it was by because I just lost it, but they were talking about how Walman wouldn't necessarily fit into those plans because he would be well into his 30s by the time these kids come up and are ready to start playing. And you know, it still takes how many years for them to develop and like settle into the league, specifically defensemen. And then kind of the same thing with Zetterlund, except that one I feel makes a little bit less sense to people because he's still a young guy. We can go ahead and start talking about that one because I know you've done more research on our return. But you know, for us, I think it's just we get attached to these players. We saw how him and Eklund bonded so quickly when he first got traded here during the who did we trade for him? What team did he come from? The Jersey. Oh, for the Meyer trade. I'm so sorry. You know, we watched him develop like, you know, that first little portion of that season, he wasn't doing well. The next coming season, he started scoring really well for us. He played all 82 games. Apparently, he was the only Shark to play all 82 games last season because everyone else was getting injured or got traded away or whatever it was. And you know, he hadn't missed any games this season. He had put up about like 20 goals already. You know, he was one of our leading goal scorers. So it is hard to see one of these guys go, especially because I was fully convinced that he was going to be part of our young core group to like help out Celebrini and Smith and all the other guys ready to come up because he was a goal scorer, because he was such a good presence in the locker room, and specifically because of the bond with Eklund and the chemistry they had on the ice. I've been duped.
So yeah, so all the trades talk that we talked about earlier, all that stuff with the UFAs, we knew that that was going to come down the line. We were prepared for that and whatever. The Walman one is upsetting to see just because we had a little more stability on the defense side of things. But as we've already talked about, we do see like the reasoning behind it. Like Greer is definitely valuing making sure that he's trying to balance rebuilding this team, sustaining a high caliber prospect pool, and then making sure that that there's adequate veteran presence. While it isn't somebody who's like gonna be the next offensive defenseman in their prime, like while that's helpful for us to start to get wins and things like that, he's it's not as valuable at this moment, especially because we're still 32nd in the standings. We need to make these moves, and it is frustrating. But as he said in his media appearance, he is hoping this is the last season we have to do something like this. Like, he's making these decisions that, like, while feelings quite valid, the Zetterlund trade, a couple episodes ago, we talked about how I was trying to figure out who was going to go on my Cali Finn jersey, and Zetterlund was on the short list. I had a lot of feels for this guy, our like resident infant, who I'm sure Drew Remenda is having a bit of sadness that he doesn't get to have this toddler come over and smile at him and make silly things during a pregame. Like, it's felt across the organization for sure, but Greer is having to make these decisions and has to have that tough love to not get attached to these guys. And so, of course, sadness, being upset, valid. But when we look at it objectively, even this trade is a little hard to swallow. And this came out of right field. Didn't see this coming at all. No. It definitely sent shockwaves. As I was telling you, my phone was blowing up. One of my friends who I went to the game with last night, very upset. We spent all of the first intermission having a discussion about it, where I just like, let me talk. Let me say something. Because he was very like, I don't like it. I don't like this trade. And I'm like, okay, I get it. I also don't like it. But then I'm also choosing to wait and see the vision. Because when Greer was asked about this, I think majority of the questions during the media appearance was about this trade. Like, everyone was like, why did you do this trade? We don't understand, especially with who came back in return. Zach Ostapchuk, who, if you're just quickly doing a Google search, you're probably very underwhelmed with what you see. But as he talked about in the media appearance, this was the bulk of their focus. Like, I thought, oh, cool, we'll get this prospect guy, and sweet, we got a second round pick. He said the second round pick was just like a nice little sprinkle on top, but it wasn't the thing that he was focused. They were focused on this guy. And my friend was like, I think he was rushed. This was like, he was already in the thick of it and it was coming down on the wire. And I think he just pulled the trigger because he was just like, I just got to get this done. And then I was like, clarify with my friend, what part of this was the rush part? And he just felt like we went back and forth. He just generally does not like this prospect. He felt like he could have gotten something better. And I get it. And I was also saying, like, in some aspects, this feels like the Timo Meier trade again. Not one for one, not like we have to keep going back and forth with like the thing I'm about to say. I don't want you to take this as a black and white. I'm saying I feel like this is a very complex trade. Unlike the other ones that we discussed, like, yeah, it makes sense. Like, Cunningham wasn't working out. You go to the Columbus Blue Jackets, we get a fourth round pick. That seems fair in comparison to the other trades that are happening, right? Those are easy to digest, that he just wasn't working out. Let's get something for him. But as you said, Fabian Zetterlund looked like he was going to be part of the core. And as we talked about being 32nd in the league, the reality is the core is probably just Will Smith and Celebrini right now. And you have to, everyone else, season to season, it's going to change. If it as a whole, if it's just not working out for the bigger picture of it. And that's the bigger discussion that I had where I'm like, I feel like we need to step back and look at the bigger picture of it. I don't think it had anything to do with Fabian Zetterlund's like production. Obviously, as you mentioned, he's been one of like our goal producers. I don't see him being necessarily 1-for-1 at this time with Zach Ostapchuk. But when Grier talked about seeing Zach Ostapchuk as the third center, that's where I kind of started looking at it from the bigger picture of our prospect makeup. Because he's looking at it like not season to season in this regard, but the bigger picture of who we have in our prospect pool, how they're all doing. A lot of the guys like Musty and Shern I swear to God, I heard his name the other day and I'm going to butcher it. But these guys that are like, you know, when you see like, oh, here, this dude like got a handful of goals and assists. He's doing really good things with his junior club or doing really great things at the collegiate level. Like, not many of those are centers. And as we saw at the beginning of the season, we started Will Smith at center because that is ideally, I think, where we want him to play. And it wasn't working out. It's not to say that Will Smith should not be a center. It's just that it's too much at this current time. He's not where like Celebrini's perfectly fine and in his element of being a center. It's just different. You just need to consider what is best for the player right now. And I think we can even go back to like when Hertl first came in with the Sharks. Hertl is a center. For a while, he was a wing. It just ended up working out that was better for his development. And eventually he comes back to center. Or maybe they never come back to center. And those are the things that I'm kind of like, not so many words, trying to look at it in the big picture. And this is all me kind of interpreting what he's saying, where maybe there's somewhere down in the production of the bigger picture of our prospect pool that maybe he's like, we need more value down the middle. And while it is not a Celebrini or a Smith, I think we can all kind of see the value in having different players in the lineup who are assigned different roles. Like, while this guy from his stats is not necessarily lighting up the lamp, one of the things that Grier talked about in like a comparison to an NHL player, he related the type of player of Zach Ostapchuk to Adam Lowry. Adam Lowry is the captain of the Winnipeg Jets. He's been there since like forever. He's not playing on their top two lines, but he is a type of center that his defensive side of his game is very strong. And when you look at the types of roles that every player, a winger, a defenseman, a center, the goalie on the ice, the types of responsibilities that they have, center is essentially like the quarterback of the lineup. They are responsible with kind of dictating the gameplay, and you need a very smart player in there. And you might not necessarily want, like in an ideal world, you would have Celebrinis all the way down the line. Not realistic. I don't think you can realistically draft that way and be able to get back into playoff contention in a reasonable amount of time. It's just not going to happen. But there's also great value in having a defensive center like an Adam Lowry, where maybe you have strong wingers on his side and he's able to defend while setting up plays and things like that. But again, I'm not saying I'm definitely still in a wait and see, because I want to be convinced that this trade makes sense to give up a Fabian Zetterlund for a guy that's still not going to be in the lineup, probably for like, I don't know if we see him next season because he's not here yet. So I don't think he was going, when he eventually gets here, I don't know if we're going to see him at the Sharks, in the Sharks roster. Maybe he helps right now with the CUDA. I am very interested in seeing this vision that Greer has alluded to with this trade, but it is a difficult one to swallow. And I think it is a risk to give up Fabian Zetterlund while he is not on the older side of things. He's kind of right in there where he can still be part of the rebuild and whatever. But I can definitely see why it's a very polarizing trade. So
Yeah. To your point with the new kid, Ostapchuk, I think because people are upset when you're comparing their stats next to each other. And what they're not really considering is, again, the age gap, because Zetterlund is 25 and Ostapchuk is 21. Secondly, maybe he was put up into the NHL roster before he was ready. He probably still needs some time to develop, which, like you said, we don't know if we're going to see him in the Sharks lineup next season or if he's going to develop on the CUDA for a bit. But he has time, because the only two guys that we've drafted recently that have made the NHL roster are Celebrini and Will Smith. And so, we're still waiting to see Quentin Musty come up. We're waiting to see the the Russian kid whose name we can never remember how to pronounce.
yeah,
Chernoslav.
Igor
Chern
Chernislav
something. I'm so sorry.
probably did not say that correctly. But then even like Philip Beested, we haven't seen him at the NHL level yet, and he's in the pipeline for the center role.
Right.
So like I was saying to my friend, like, objectively speaking, I feel like center should, like, a strong down the middle is more valuable than a producing winger. Like, you want a strong anchor on, because you want to be able to roll out these lines. And also, you know how they talk about, like, when they're like, oh, they put out the McDavid line. Well, then the coach puts out a line, like, you remember back in the day when Vlasic was, in his heyday, him and Justin Braun were infamous for being a shutdown pair. That is the defensive pair that might not necessarily play the most minutes. Like, they're not on the power play. They're probably on the PK, but when you have the McDavid line out there, it, like, strategically, it doesn't make sense to, oh, let's put out our top scoring guys too. Like, no, their objective is, when we put you out there, your objective is to score. But when you put out a high producing line, with a McDavid, you want to ideally to put out your defensive pair, your defensive line, like a third line or a fourth line, where their job is to shut down the production of this top pair. So going back to, like, yeah, sure, seems like it would be great to have, like, Celebrini's all down the center, and then you have Will Smith's, like, on their wing. But then your focus is, not to say that, I mean, Celebrini's game all around is good, I think, from what we can see. But that's not always the case. And you don't want to always put out these offensive-minded lines, because then you're expecting your defensive pair, or even still, if you put out your offensive defensemen. So now we're just focusing, like, completely on goal scoring. Well, who's going to help to prevent the goals from going the other way? Yeah. And I think and that's why when I was having these discussions, I was like, I want to wait and see, because this definitely feels like a complex trade when it's related to the bigger picture of the makeup of the team. Like, we're like going back to, if you look at the stats, yeah, you're going to be underwhelmed. You're going to be like, why? This guy doesn't score like Zetterlund. It's like, we're not trading him to find like a better Zetterlund. Like, Zetterlund has a particular role. He is the guy that is going to score goals. And it comes from having a strong center on your line to help drive that play. Not necessarily, it seems like, why we made this trade to get Osapchuk, but perhaps there is a deficiency in that type of role. I mean, we know that we've been having defensive problems on this team.
Yeah.
And perhaps that is coming into play, where he's looking at the bigger picture of the types of players that have been drafted, the types of ones that are going to come up the line, maybe how he decides to fill the roster in the offseason. And I think he's feeling like that is an element of our game that we need to make sure that we're also thinking about, while we're also having these Quentin Musties, these like Sam Dickinson, like these offensive minded guys. While scoring is important, and that was something that was lacking from us last season that we've improved on, like, you need to make sure that you are balancing out the entire roster. And so perhaps that is the reason, the bigger underlying reason for this trade. But again, feelings involved, yes. The whole Eklund Zetterlund connection, it's really awful to see that your best friend has to go now across the world. Like,
World.
like when this trade was made, I mean, even before this, like, the thing that we didn't really talk about was the Senators made a big trade. They shipped it off Norris to the Sabres for Dylan Cousins and another whoever. Obviously don't care that much about that trade, but I learned that day that apparently Josh Norris and Brady Tkachuk are BFFs. And Brady Tkachuk, you know, he did face the media and he couldn't even get out like, all he was just saying, like, he was trying to say how, you know, it is upsetting, but he was trying to put on a brave face and say like the hockey answers, and they were just like all staring at him. And it's like, when have you seen Brady Tkachuk like that? And, you know, so the human element of, yeah, you create these bonds with these players. And the reality is the Senators have not made the playoffs in 7 years. Like, and fortunately, you have to have a GM who's going to put feelings aside and be like, sorry, your best friend has to leave because we need to we're seeing that something needs to get done to get us over the hump. And unfortunately, Norris is not part of that picture, or he was someone that the Sabres felt were going to be really good in their lineup. And so that's why he goes. And then I even was thinking even further back to when Henrik Lundqvist was on the Rangers and Matt Zuccarello was on the Rangers. And Matt and Henrik have had like a strong bond for over a decade. And Matt Zuccarello was a pending UFA. They decided to trade him off. And then I guess the next day or whatever, they're like, microphone in Hank's face. How do you feel about your best friend of a decade not being here anymore? Bro could not even get a couple of words out, and he was just like, sorry, I'm not going to answer this question. He just looked like he was trying to hold it together, and he was not holding it together one bit. So I totally get Eklund being like, nope, I'm not even going to try and like put on a brave face. I want to be miserable alone. Don't talk to me.
No, for real. I'd be the same. Stop sticking those microphones in my face. I am sad. I wanted to say something because you said that your friend thought that the Zetterlund trade felt like Greer might have rushed with the deadline approaching, and I was thinking like Greer doesn't seem like the type of person to feel rushed. That man, as we've mentioned before, is like 10 steps ahead of all of us as fans who don't pay attention to all these hockey analytics and like how to put a team together. Like, we're just here to criticize the man because our feelings got hurt. Like, this dude has a plan. If we don't see it, that's our fault. We're not invested in this sport the way he is. This is his job. But I just thought that was funny because every time you look at him, that man is calm.
Peak poker face.
No, for real.
My face would be doing all kind of flips if you asked me a very heated question. Like even when Shang asked him about after all this was said and done, like the frenzy of like the final like 48 hours before trade deadline, then you start seeing all the values that players are getting and the picks and stuff like that. Like Shang asked Greer about the trade with the Dallas Stars for Granlund and CC. And I guess when you look at these other trades, like he could have, I asked my friend about this and he said, you know, yeah, if you look at it, you could have probably gone like 2 firsts for Granlund with the amount of like people were handing out all these firsts and whatever. I mean, Walman got a first. I don't know necessarily if you would like put Walman and Granlund's like value. I mean, different positions and whatever, but it essentially, I think Shang was trying to say, you know, like if you had waited, maybe you could get like more value from it. And then Greer countered with like, you know, yeah, like I don't know if he asked him, you know, if you rethink that or you regret it or something. I can't remember anymore, but Greer kind of just came out and been like, well, yeah, but then if you wait, there's also the potential that he gets injured and then you get nothing. And like when these trades happen and, you know, people put out their articles and analyze them and then put grades to it, like I get it for the sake of like doing it and for, you know, perspective of stuff. And I'm not saying that like I feel one way or the other, but I would, I guess, side with Greer's response of like, yeah, you're gambling. How long do you wait to make this trade? How, you know, if you wait like one more day, it's like, you know what I was thinking about? I was thinking back to like fantasy. And it's like, you know that you need to make a move, but then you're worried, like you're not thinking about it and feeling like you are confident enough to drop a player, to trade for a player, blah, blah, blah. Like while it's not anywhere near the experience of being the general manager of an actual team, I can see where you're just like, if I wait too long, something can change. And so, you know, instead of looking back and being like, oh, darn, I should have waited another day type of thing. Like, I guess I respect the fact that Greer's like, no, we made that trade. We're moving on.
I'm not regretting it. Don't make me
like,
feel guilty now.
Yeah, he was like, okay.
I think another thing we wanted to talk about, you specifically, to kind of help people understand why all these trades are happening, why we're trading away favorites and things, was this tweet that you came across by Byron Bader on Twitter that says, the trend continues into the 23-24 playoffs. You ain't got stars, you ain't got no chance. 73% of the teams with 5 or more stars made it. 80% of the teams with 2 or less didn't make it. The Islanders and Capitals, the 2 teams that did make it, may very well get swept. So he has a list of every single team in this league, how many true stars they have, how many star seasons, and likely playoffs for this, or I guess last season, my bad. With the Dallas Stars being on top with 7 true stars, 9 star seasons, and they made playoffs. You know, it has the Panthers, Red Wings, Knights, Hurricanes, Senators, Jets, Rangers on the top, with the Sharks all the way at the bottom.
With nada.
Right. Mind you, this is for last season before we had Smith and Celebrini on the team. But yeah, no stars, no star seasons, no playoffs. And so a lot of the moves that Greer is making hopefully is what's moving us towards the top of this list. I would assume we have 2 stars now in Silverini and Smith. While Eklund, I don't think Eklund would be considered like a star, but we are very hopeful that he's going to be one of our guys with Smith and Eklund. Celebrini. Because
Are you foreshadowing that we're getting the other Eklund?
that'd be fun. To make a family thing, a family affair. Shit, might as well just trade for the other Celebrini too, you know? Just kidding. Anyways, the Sharks are at the bottom of many lists, except for one, which is the prospect pool number 1. That is a very important one that we are at the top of. And as all this to say, as hard as these trade deadlines are, like last season with the hurdle one was a big heartbreak. This year, it feels like we just shipped off half the team. It's hard, but necessary and moving towards what all the fans want in a good team, a good team that consistently wins and is going to take us to the playoff, at the very least, the playoffs in the next 3-4 seasons. I don't know. My best guess. That seems fast, but who knows?
Yeah, so check out this graphic on Byron M. Bader. Yes. It really just kind of puts it into perspective, just going back to what he said, that Greer and his staff are having to balance multiple plates right now. They're trying to build up the prospect pool again, because for years upon years, the Sharks have traded off our picks to get the guys that we felt like we just were missing 1 or 2 dudes in the lineup that were going to get us over the hump. And so you trade away the future for the now. Now we have to look at it in the opposite perspective of, we are focused on the future and things that are now that are exciting, like a Walman, like a like Vanacek might have been okay, you know, just to like I was talking with my friend last night about like, who are we gonna have to like cushion Askarov next season. We started looking at like, who are the UFAs for the goalies, and not really any kind of stuck out. He was kind of like, well, if Jake Allen becomes available, that seems fine. I was like, really? You want Jake Allen over, like, you don't want to give, you know, Georgiev an extra chance? He's like, nope. And I'm like, fair. Like, I think a conversation might happen with Georg, because he is kind of showing like he's getting up out of his head. But I don't know if you risk that with like giving him that opportunity, and then you don't want to force Askarov to come in. You don't want to rush his development. So, but it's like this stuff that we have to think about, where we are focusing on the future, and it is very upsetting to get these guys that kind of feel like, well, how are they going to help us? It's the value fact that's related to how long these guys have kind of been in the league. Like, the experience is what's going to help us, because we do want to give our youth the ice time that they deserve. We don't want to shove them down in a 3rd or 4th line and give them 10 minutes a night to figure it out. Like, we do want to support them, even when it feels like, oh my God, we're getting slaughtered. Is this really good for our to the mental health of our youth? And I think, even the coaching staff has to balance that. So Greer's balancing giving youth the ice time, building up the prospect pool that it was been like horrendously decimated during the years for this franchise that we were trying to go for the cup, and not find ourselves in a situation where this going back to the graphic that Byron put out, like, the Dallas Stars made this huge move to get Rantanen. Like, they're way up already on this list as of last season. Florida Panthers, we know that they won last season. They're right behind the Dallas Stars on this graphic. The Detroit Red Wings is probably like the biggest, like, if we kind of think about this, the Red Wings have not made the playoffs in 8 seasons. And when you look at, the types of players that they have on their roster, the types of players that even the Senators have on their roster, like freaking Brady Tkachuk, Tim Stützle, like those are essentially like our Macklin Celebrini and Will Smith. And the Senators can't get into the playoffs. Senators haven't gone to the playoffs in 7 years.
Yeah.
Like, we're not in a position to be considering outside of the scope of Will Smith and Celebrini right now that we're ready to bestow the core next to any of these of anyone else on this roster outside of them.
Right.
Because of the reality that statistically you need at least going back to what this post said, 73% of the teams with 5 or more stars made it. As you said, this was a graphic from last season where we have 0. We would imagine that we probably have 2 now. But star seasons may not be 2. Well,
no, absolutely
maybe
not.
next season, maybe Macklin Celebrini, and then 80% of the teams with 2 or less didn't make it. And we, as of this time of the graphic, have 0. So we're nowhere near solidifying anybody for any sort of definite, like, yes, you are here beyond this season. Like, we've got to stay on our toes. But going back to what Greer said, he is hoping this is the last season that we're just wiping off everyone who isn't under a certain age group, who is a pending UFA, who is asking for more than what we can realistically give them, like a Blackwood. As great as it would be to have someone amazing in goal right now, that doesn't align with the timeline and the other elements out on the ice. So yeah, it's a difficult pill to swallow.
It's also difficult for some players. Max Miller wrote an article, had a conversation with Tyler Toffoli that came out yesterday at post trade deadline. It asked for his opinion about how he felt about all the moves and how he feels about being on this team for the next 3 seasons. I think he signed a 4-season contract, this one being his first, so he'll have 3 more on there. In the article, Max mentions that Toffoli has only been on contenders. Like, he's been very close to making the playoffs or whatever it is. He has played in the playoffs for most of his career, so this is the first time in a long time where he's not making playoffs, and his role has shifted into being a mentor for the young guys. Our young guys being Smith and Celebrini. As we mentioned last episode, we talked about the did we talk about this, or this happened earlier in the week?
No, we didn't talk about this yet.
Oh, okay. So that on the 5th, yeah, so earlier this week, everyone was talking about the photo posted of Celebrini, Smith, and Toffoli all in one hotel room because of a bet. Smith bet that if the 3 of them ended up each scoring a goal against the Sabres in the Sabres game, that Toffoli would have to sleep over in their hotel room for the night. And they all ended up scoring that game. Toffoli, it looks like he asked the hotel staff to put an extra bed in there or whatever for him to sleep in there. Kat, his wife, Kat Toffoli, posted a screenshot of the conversation of him telling her what was going on. And we were very excited about this when it happened because we were like, oh my God, the vibes on this team are so good, before the trade deadline kind of demolished that for us. But one of the things he mentions, Tyler mentions, is that he wants to have a conversation with Greer and what his plan is looking like, because it feels like for him, I think he feels a little bit shaky with everything, where, with certain players on the team leaving that he thought were going to be here to help with the rebuild are now gone. And so I think he just wants a little bit of clarity about where the team is headed now, which is interesting because I don't know if I've seen an interview like this before about a player's insights on how they're feeling in regards to the team's plan, or if I have, or like, I'm sure they've happened, but I haven't kept up with it. So, yeah, just another perspective to look at.
Yeah, it's certainly interesting because, I mean, I know we always get a little worried about the Sharks being down here in the cellar and the potential that like even taxes play a role in players that could be helpful for the right direction of this team. I mean, we certainly have to try and you're almost kind of like having to market this team in a way that you can get these guys like a Tyler Toffoli and Alex Wenberg to buy into being here, and with the potential that we are gonna get up from out of the basement and start moving in the right direction. And earlier this season, with after all the offseason moves that were made, like the Sharks were projected to be much higher in the standings, and it didn't work out. And while scoring has definitely been there, we haven't been able to find a way to close things out. And I mean, but I don't know, like Toffoli has definitely been just such a help in so many areas for this team. But like I was saying earlier, with how Greer's been juggling all this stuff, I think it is a good if this is a welcomed conversation that Greer enjoys having with the veterans on the team, like I think that is something healthy moving forward, because yeah, like it's not an easy job to do. This, like we were saying earlier, the Sharks have traded away their future for many, many years. There were a lot of the team friendly deals, the no movement clauses and everything that Doug Wilson gave to all these players that did kind of cause us to, like, it made it a little more difficult. Like with, if you look in comparison to how the Hawks are doing their rebuild, they didn't necessarily have to do that, but they also weren't really tied down with all these multiple no movement clauses. And so I think it did kind of cause us to be delayed in our ability to tear down as much as we needed to and build back up. And I don't think Greer is necessarily playing the long game, but also is not trying to rush us through this rebuild and find ourselves in a situation where we are pushing these guys to step into bigger roles long before they're ready. And then if it doesn't work out, and then what are we having the conversation about getting another coach in there? I mean, I know that's conversations that have been happening throughout the fan base about them feeling like maybe Rosowski isn't the guy. Like, I am not on that train. I think it's perfectly fine. But yeah, like hopefully next season we start seeing more wins, more points in the wins category. But it's definitely going to fall on really everybody on this team. Like in the post game media appearance, like Rosowski was talking about, like, yeah, we're despite everything that's happened in the last 48 hours, the guys understand that they should understand that there are jobs to be won here. Like, if you want to be here and you want to be part of the solution, like you are being given that opportunity, and you need to show up and show that you want to be here. And I felt like this time last season after the trades, like I was having discussions about this, like this team was unwatchable after the trade deadline. Like, it was already painful to get through last season, but once we made all these trades that were necessary before the trade deadline, it was just like, oh my God, can we get out of the season already? Like, this is, and you could see it on the guys' faces. And while they are still feeling that to some extent, like, I mean, I think it speaks to the hope of the future that Celebrini is so matured in his outlook on things, that he was out, like he got several points last game. Like, Will Smith is still doing amazing stuff in his development. I really like the little things that I saw from like Luke Madulin, who was getting more ice time paired up with Ferraro. So he's coming along nicely, and we have all this other stuff that's just right there on the horizon. Those players are going to come through, and so hopefully we start seeing more points in the win category next season, because I think everybody understands where we're at. But yeah, there were everyone had kind of expected that the standings would be a little different this season.
Yeah, to your point, last night, you did see the team still have a fight in them, which was nice to see, considering the circumstances. But you could also kind of see that they were feeling the effects for sure. They came out pretty strong the first period. I don't want to talk too
Like
much about the
20
game
shots on goal.
right. I don't want to talk too much about the game because we've been here for a while now, and I still have other things I want to get to. But yeah, they did come up flying, and then like as the game went on, you could see their energy just depleting. So, but you could still see the fight in some of those players. But yeah, I think that's all we have on the trade stuff. I did want to talk about last night's event at the game. Yesterday was International Women's Day. The Sharks ended up hosting a Women of Teal night, which they do every year to celebrate the women. Usually it's like the women in hockey, I think, but they've expanded it a little bit to include women in the Bay Area. They held a pregame event before the game that we were both invited to. Jay couldn't make it out, but I did attend, and it felt like a networking event. Hold on, let me read this, the what do you call this, press release. They were honoring women across the Bay Area. They hosted a mix-in. Sorry. They had a mix of in-game events, community activations, and fan engagement that reflects organization's commitment to diversity and inclusion and belonging. So of course they had an artist come and do the collaboration. They had a logo designed by Amanda Valenzuela. It was proceeds benefited the Northern California Youth Hockey Association Female Programming Scholarships. Additionally, the artist logo was featured prominently across several events, including social media, in-game promotions, the usuals, They gave away beanies again last night. The pregame Pass the Puck event, which is the event I attended that we were invited to, brought together the Bay Area community, including NBC Bay Area anchor Laura Garcia. She was also interviewed during the game during intermission. as well as leaders from local university sports teams and more. The event encouraged attendees to quote unquote pass the puck, sharing wisdom and inspiration while contributing to quote unquote pay it forward activity. Basically, what they had was little stations where there were prompts. There were like 4 prompts set up at these tables. There were sticky notes and pens, and we were encouraged to go and answer the prompts and leave the sticky notes on each little stand thing that the questions were on. So everyone gave their advice. One of them was like, what keeps you motivated? One of them was like, how do you put yourself first? What are your tips for networking? And I forget what the 4th one was, but we were all encouraged to do that. There were a bunch of sticky notes there. It was mostly women. I did see possibly a couple non-binary folks and a few men sprinkled in there. But I did get to talk to Tara because she was hosting the event. I hadn't seen her in a minute. I've met Heather, who we got connected to through Netta. God, what is her title? She's the president of marketing.
Sure.
Right. Met her, super friendly. She told me that she listens to the podcast pretty, like, she's listened to several episodes, which I was surprised by because I was like,
hi, Heather.
No, for real, hi. Because I thought it was just like the one episode I linked that one time because she also invited us to Pride Night. But I guess she does take the time to listen to us, which is we're super grateful for. Also very thankful that she invited us out to this event. It was really fun. We got our beanies. They handed out these pucks that have the logo. I don't know if you can see this. There's a glare. The logo the artist made with a QR code on the back. That if you scan it, it'll take you to the page with the prompts. They haven't put up the responses yet, but they're going to put that up sometime soon. So you could see that for yourselves if you're on YouTube and could pause it, and then you can scan the code and maybe look at that. But yeah, Heather's super friendly. Got to chatting with her for a little bit. And then I also met Kat Toffoli at this event. So I got to talk to her for a little bit, introduce myself because she was like, hey, I also do a podcast. Tara introduced us because I was really shy. But yeah, and I gave her a sticker. I was like, hey, check us out. What else happened? So after the game, we went to our seats. Didn't know that. I thought we were just going to be put in with like lower bowl again like last time, but she put us up in the suite section with all the other women that were part of the Women of Teal Advisory Committee, which was something that they also announced at the pregame event. So here on the press release, it says, as part of the Women's History Month celebration, the Sharks are proud to announce the formation of the Women of Teal Advisory Committee, a group of women from around the Bay Area who will provide strategic guidance on initiatives aimed at growing and enhancing the Sharks' female fan base. This committee will work closely to the team's front office to develop impactful programs, events, and community partnerships that foster inclusivity and engagement. The committee is comprised of Sharks 365 members, community members, government officials, students, educators, influencers, and leaders in the tech industry. By amplifying the voices and perspectives of women, the Sharks are committed to creating a more dynamic and welcoming experience for all fans. So yeah, they did announce some of the names of the women who are part of this committee, Kat Toffoli being one of them. I believe I can't remember who the government officials were. Honestly, there were so many people. I honestly can't. I do remember that one of the students is she attends Cal Berkeley, and I think I heard that she did a project with Heather, which is how they know each other. I didn't hear what the project was. Man, dude, my social battery was depleting at this point. But when we got up to the suite, did get to meet a few other women, one of them being one of the team physicians who works on wrists and hands. I was like, dang, you must see a lot of injuries. But she was very friendly. We talked a little bit. And then the rest of the time I was like, okay, I don't usually get to sit up here, so I'm going to go ahead and enjoy the game. And it was a really good view, you know. They also provided snacks at the event, which was like they had veggies and their ranch, and then they had like chicken nug tenders and taquitos and like little sprinkles here and there. And then they had cupcakes, which by Frost Cupcakes, which is, if you guys don't know and keep up with this, Randy Hahn's wife owns that bakery out in San Jose. So she went ahead and provided those cupcakes for this event. Up at the suite, we also were provided with a charcuterie board and like veggies and stuff. More veggies. They just left to feed us veggies, I guess. Stay healthy. But that was really fun. They also had like a popcorn bucket. You could kind of whatever. And then by the end of the game, so I attended with my girlfriend and we were headed out and we looked over. We both like quickly glanced at the table and we saw this tray of cookies. We were like, cookies, like we missed the cookies. And we were like, oh, let me just grab one before we go. And there was like a lady standing there. She was like, take some more. They're gonna throw these out. They can't take them with them. And I was like, okay, so we grab more to take home. I was like, I never get to be here. I'm being treated to snacks. Heck yeah, I'm gonna take those. So we took some for my girlfriend's roommates and a couple more for ourselves, and we had a great time. But yeah, I don't know because I didn't go downstairs at all because it's like you have to take an elevator to get to these suites, and I was like, that seems like a lot. It doesn't seem like they had really any concourse activities this time around. Wait, scratch that. It says there's in-game. No, yeah. So there were the in-game entertainments. The national anthem was performed by Ernesti Balisi. There were highlights celebrating female players and leaders in the sports world. The honor guard was presented by a Girl Scout troop 30159. We did see a lot of Girl Scouts in the audience during intermissions and things. The PA announcer was Emily Harlan, who usually does our in-arena hosting. But yesterday we had Aubrey Tolliver, who does in-game host for the 49ers normally, I was surprised to see a new face. I was like, what's happening? So it's nice that they gave an explanation for that. They did have a lot of Sharks Ice little girls doing, they're highlighting them. And then there was something else. There was just like, oh, apparently last night was also ASL night. And the only thing that I noticed that was different was that the national anthem also had an ASL interpreter doing the national anthem next to the singer. So I thought that was pretty cool. I thought that was going to be something that they implemented full time, which would be really nice, but it might have just been for the night. Just consider that because that would be helpful for people. Yeah, it was fun. It was great. Although it was just a lot of networking. I've been doing a lot of talking these past 2 days.
Well, I'm glad that you went to that and you endured. I think those events are certainly helpful. It's just, yeah, when you were saying that your social, like all the stuff that you're doing, I was saying, I'm just tired reading what you just said. Like this past week, we always, like, my work had like an in service and it ended up being on a day when I wasn't on site, and I was happy to skip that because I asked my coworker the next day who went. I was like, so how was it? And he's like, well, the icebreakers weren't so bad this year. And I was just like, I generally don't like any icebreakers, so you're really gonna have to sell me on it not being so bad. And it sounded like, I mean, I get it. These things are not always going to. Everyone's got their vibe and things like that, and some days it's harder to do than others.
Yeah, yesterday I started my day at 6 in the morning because I had to go for a tryout to a new job. So I started my day early, and so by the time I got there, I was like, put on a brave face. And I did as much as I could. I talked to a few people, networked, got the podcast name out there. So I did that, handed out a few stickers, did what I did, and got to watch a hockey game. So It wasn't all so bad. Man, I feel like I've been talking for years. I think that's about everything. We've been talking for a hot minute now. I think we covered everything we had on our little list here. Any last thoughts before we close this out?
I don't know if I could say that this trade deadline hurt more than last, just because I can't even remember how I felt last season. But yeah, hopefully, I mean, these are necessary moves. I don't feel like in my hearts of hearts, I feel like the reality is we are not quite ready yet, and these moves had to be made, and they're not always going to feel like they make sense, and they won't hurt as much as the last time you got attached to a player and they go and they leave the organization. But we've I think in like a couple of seasons, if we're still in this situation, I think that's around the time where I'm going to start feeling a little antsy and getting a little impatient. But some of the things that we kind of shed light on in relation to like Detroit Red Wings, the Senators. I mean, we can even look down like right now with the Ducks, who are like a season or two like ahead of us in their rebuild, and they already like shipped off like Jamie Drysdale, which I thought like, oh, that guy's their core. Well, apparently not. And then even like talks this season about like, will they or won't they trade Trevor Zegras? Like, wasn't he one of their core guys? Wasn't only a couple seasons ago they were like getting so excited about how he's a personality, he's doing the Michigan. Well, apparently not. Apparently whoever they've got coming up in their pipeline is looking more like the potential future for them than some of these guys that we were introduced to in their organization. And so hoping that in this next season, I mean, I'm looking forward to the draft. I'm looking forward to what we do in the off season. Like that's what's getting me through this hardship, and looking forward to seeing more of what we have been introduced to this season. And hopefully, like Greer said, hopefully this is the last season that we're gutting the team. And yeah, so just hang on tight, guys.
Aside from hockey things, it feels like the Sharks are doing good stuff within the community as well. And I just really felt the good vibes at the event last night. So, I mean, it feels like the vibes are transcending not just through the team locker room, but like through the organization. So it feels good to be a Sharks fan right now, even though the team is not doing so great in the standings. Yeah.
And I did love the turnout from last night. I was expecting to go into the arena and be like, whoa, people saw the trade deadline and went, well, there's no point in watching this team. And, you know, not to get into the game at all, since, you know, we have been recording for quite some time now. But I mean, like you said, that the team did come out and they put in their best effort. They got 40 flipping shots on goal. They really made Sorokin work. And some of those plays were just tipped or one thing or another. I didn't fault Georgiev for any of those first 3 goals. And 48 hours after a trade deadline, this team put on a good game for us.
Yeah, we were at the edge of our seats. It was so frustrating because they got so close so many times. Like
I had fun at that game. Sorokin, and like I said, I was expecting to go into that game being like this arena is going to be empty, and it was not. People were excited to be there. People were booing the ref. Like, people were having fun. Yeah. And while you want them to win, that was actually one of the more exciting games that I went to this season.
For sure. Yeah,
Yeah.
like Sorokin was giving up a lot of rebounds, and it always felt like the Sharks were just a half step too slow to
Those were
get
the
to them.
most frustrating ones. It's like
It's open net, and it's like by the time they got there, Sorokin made his way across. It's like, ugh,
but that
ugh,
Smith goal though, that Smith goal.
chef's kiss.
Yeah. So
Anyways,
yeah, it sucks to lose, but I had so much fun at that game. That was a very exciting game. Thank you to the players for showing up, and they did their best effort despite the blender that their lines had to go through. The new guys came in, try to make an impact as well. Like everybody was really, really putting in their best effort, despite
yeah.
the fact that that on an emotional level, definitely Eklund's being like, "Where's my bestie? Nowhere on the ice, apparently."
He did get a nice
they-
breakaway chance at one point, and we were just really
Mhm.
hoping for him to score, but it's okay.
But yep, hang in there, guys.
We're here for emotional support. All right. That's what we have for this week. It's been a lot, but if you listen to the whole
Ness is
thing,
gonna go
thanks for hanging.
crash.
I'm gonna go take a nap. I'm gonna eat and nap. We'll catch you next week, guys. Thanks for listening.
Bye.
Bye.